Let me paint you a picture. You're scrolling through Instagram and you see someone you went to school with. New car, designer clothes, fancy restaurant every weekend, vacation photos from places you've only ever typed into Google, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a little voice whispers, "Wow, they really made it." But here's the question nobody asks out loud. Did they? Because there's a very uncomfortable truth hiding inside the world of money, one that most people never talk about. The people who look the richest are very often the furthest from actually being rich. And today, we're going to walk through 10 signs that someone is performing wealth rather than building it. Not to judge them, but because understanding this psychology might just save your financial life. Let's get into it. Here's the trap most people fall into. We grew up watching movies where rich people had big houses, wore expensive watches, drove exotic cars, and ate at restaurants where the menu had no prices. So somewhere along the way, our brains got wired with a very specific image of what wealth looks like. The problem? That image is a costume, not a blueprint. Real wealth is mostly invisible. It sits quietly in brokerage accounts, index funds, rental properties, and business equity. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need validation. It just compounds. But performed wealth, that needs a stage. It needs followers. It needs people to notice. And the truly dangerous part is this. Millions of people are going into debt, sacrificing their financial futures, and silently drowning in payments just to maintain an image of success that was never real to begin with. So how do you spot the difference? Here are the 10 signs. 1. They talk about money constantly, but never about building it. You know this person. Every conversation somehow circles back to what they spent, what they bought, or what they're planning to buy next. The new phone, the upcoming trip, the outfit they just ordered. But here's what's interesting. You never hear them talk about investing. You never hear them mention savings or assets or how their money is working for them. Because for someone performing wealth, money is a prop in a story they're telling the world. For someone actually building wealth, money is a tool they're quietly putting to work. The psychology here is fascinating. Researchers call it conspicuous consumption, a term coined by economist Thorsten Veblen over 100 years ago. It's the idea that people spend money not for the utility of what they're buying, but for the signal it sends to others. The bag isn't just a bag. The car isn't just a car. They're announcements. They're saying, "Look at where I am." Real wealth doesn't need to announce itself. 2. Their lifestyle inflates the moment their income does. Imagine two people, both get a raise at work, same amount, same day. Person A thinks, "Great, I can finally increase my investment contributions and build a bigger cushion." Person B thinks, "Finally, I can upgrade my apartment, get a nicer car, and eat out more." Person B has just stepped onto what economists call the hedonic treadmill, but in personal finance, we call it lifestyle inflation. Every time their income goes up, their spending rises right along with it, sometimes faster. The result? No matter how much they earn, they're always one bad month away from financial stress. They might be making 6 figures and still have nothing saved, because the size of your income determines your wealth. The gap between what you earn and what you spend does. People pretending to be rich spend every dollar they make, sometimes more. People actually building wealth protect that gap like it's sacred. 3. They lease or finance everything that should be owned. Here's a question. Would you paint a painting you plan to keep forever? Probably not, but that's essentially what happens when someone finances a luxury car they can't afford, leases a lifestyle they don't actually own, or puts a designer wardrobe on a credit card they'll be paying off for the next 18 months. Now, financing things isn't always bad. Strategic debt, like a mortgage on a property that builds equity or a business loan that generates a return, can be powerful. But financing a lifestyle, that's paying extra money to appear like you have money you don't have. The irony is brutal. The person driving the most impressive car on the street might be the one with the lowest net worth, because net worth isn't about what you're driving, it's about what you own minus what you owe. And for a lot of wealth performers, that number is dangerously close to zero, or even negative. 4. They're weirdly vague about how they make money. You've probably met someone like this. They seem to have money, they're always doing something, there's always a project or a deal or something big coming. But when you ask what they actually do, the answer gets foggy real fast. Sometimes it's vague talk about business. Sometimes it's dropping buzzwords, crypto, dropshipping, real estate, without any real substance. Sometimes it's a lifestyle brand built entirely on looking like they already made it, in hopes of eventually making it. There's nothing wrong with being in the early stage of building something. Everyone starts somewhere. The red flag is when the lifestyle has raced so far ahead of the actual income that the whole thing is held together with a very thin thread and a lot of social media posts. 5. They use luxury brands as a personality. This one goes deep into the psychology of identity and money. For some people, the brands they wear and carry aren't just preferences, they're how they define themselves. The logo on the bag isn't a design choice, it's a declaration of status. And the terrifying thing is, the luxury industry knows this exactly. It's a feature, not a bug. High-end brands are literally designed to make you feel like you're buying an identity upgrade, not just a product. But the thing about wealthy people, truly wealthy people, many of them have remarkably simple tastes. Not all of them, but many. Warren Buffett is worth over $100 billion and lived in the same modest house in Omaha since 1958. He drives himself to McDonald's for breakfast. That's because he can't afford better. It's because he doesn't need external symbols to feel secure in who he is. People who are still building, still climbing, still trying to prove something, they need the labels because the label does the talking their bank account isn't ready to do yet. 6. They can't handle financial conversations without deflecting. Ask someone who's genuinely doing well financially about money, and they'll usually engage. They might talk about how they think about investments, what they've learned, what mistakes they made. Ask someone performing wealth about money, and watch what happens. They either change the subject, make a joke, or suddenly need to be somewhere else. Because real financial literacy creates confidence, but a financial illusion is fragile. One too many questions and the whole thing starts to crack. So the deflection isn't rudeness, it's self-protection. 7. Their social circle is entirely based on status spending. Here's a subtle but powerful one. Think about the social lives of people who perform wealth. Where do they spend their time? Often in environments where spending is the social activity. Expensive clubs, trendy restaurants where the vibe costs more than the food. Group trips where the pressure to keep up is baked into the invitation. The dangerous part? These environments create a feedback loop. Everyone's performing for everyone else. No one wants to be the one who can't keep up, so everyone keeps spending, and everyone keeps pretending. The result is a social life that quietly bleeds money every single weekend, while reinforcing the belief that this is just what success looks like. Meanwhile, some of the wealthiest people in the world have remarkably low-key social lives, because they're not trying to win a status competition. They already know where they stand, and their bank statements confirm it privately, not publicly. 8. They react emotionally to other people's financial choices. This one is more psychological than it might seem. Have you ever noticed how someone who's pretending to be rich gets genuinely bothered when other people make modest financial choices? They make fun of people who drive affordable cars. They roll their eyes at people who bring lunch from home. They act like frugality is a personality flaw. Why? Because modest financial choices by other people are a quiet threat to the performance. If someone choosing a cheaper car is happy and respected, it undermines the entire story that you need to spend big to be significant. So the mockery isn't really about the other person, it's about defending the worldview that expensive equals valuable. Because if that worldview collapses, the entire financial sacrifice behind the performance stops making sense. So the constant big thing coming narrative is often a way of borrowing credibility from a future that may never arrive. Real builders tend to be quietly patient. They do the work, they save, they invest. They don't need the story to be told yet because they trust the process. The constant big thing coming narrative is often a way of borrowing credibility from a future that may never arrive. Real builders tend to be quietly patient. They do the work, they save, they invest. They don't need the story to be told yet because they trust the process. 10. They have no actual assets. This is the most important one, and it's the one that all the other 9 all point toward. Assets are things that put money in your pocket over time, a piece of real estate that generates rent, stocks that grow and pay dividends, a business that earns revenue, even a high-yield savings account that works quietly in the background. Someone who is actually building wealth has assets, even small ones. They might not be big yet, but the habit of acquiring assets instead of liabilities is there. Someone performing wealth, their money flows out as fast as it flows in, sometimes faster. Their net worth, if you sat down and calculated it honestly, would be startlingly low relative to their visible lifestyle. Because here's the cold, hard truth about wealth. It's not a feeling, it's not a look, it's a number. It's assets minus liabilities. And a lot of people with very impressive-looking financial lives have a number that would shock you. So why does any of this matter? Because the most dangerous thing about performed wealth isn't the debt it creates, it's the map it gives other people. When we watch someone who looks successful and mistake their performance for reality, we start chasing the wrong target. We start measuring our own progress against a fiction. We feel behind when we're actually on track. We feel inadequate when we're making smart choices. This is what psychologists call social comparison theory, the human tendency to measure ourselves against others. And in the age of social media, we're doing it constantly at massive scale, against highly curated, often misleading snapshots of other people's financial lives. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop measuring wealth by what people show. Start measuring wealth by what people own. The quiet person who drives an average car, packs their lunch, and has been consistently investing for a decade, they might be worth more than everyone at the flashy table combined. Wealth that is seen is often borrowed. Wealth that is built is quietly owned. So what do you actually do with all of this? First, audit your own behavior, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. Are there places where you're spending for the signal rather than the substance? Are there purchases in your life that are really about how they make you look rather than how they make your life better? Second, stop letting other people's financial performances set your financial pace. You don't know what's behind the curtain. You don't know what the monthly payments look like. You don't know what the credit card statements say. So stop letting the highlight reel of someone else's financial life become the benchmark for yours. Third, fall in love with the boring stuff. The automatic investment contributions that nobody posts about, the emergency fund that nobody brags about at dinner, the index fund that quietly grows every month while you're getting on with your life. This is the stuff that actually builds real freedom. It's not photogenic, but it works. And fourth, learn to see assets as the real status symbol. Because one day, the person quietly buying assets while everyone else was buying impressions will wake up financially free, and the person who spent years performing wealth will still be running on a treadmill, working hard just to pay for the costume. Here's the thought I want to leave you with. There are 2 types of financial lives you can build. One looks rich from the outside and is hollow on the inside. It requires a constant performance, it costs a fortune to maintain, and it gives you the feeling of wealth without ever giving you the freedom of it. The other type doesn't look like much at first. It's patient, it's consistent, it lives below its means and invests the difference. It doesn't need applause. But one day, quietly, undramatically, it pays off every obligation, owns every asset outright, and gives you something no performance ever could. Time, choice, freedom. The real flex isn't the car in the driveway, it's waking up on a Tuesday morning and having zero financial fear about the day ahead. Build that.